Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we're looking at a poor widow giving all that she has. If you've been following along, Jesus just finished like really laying into the religious leaders and their followers, and basically calling them out for who they are and the hypocrites that they were. And so we continue into Mark and Luke here that record this particular sit down and conversation that Jesus has with the disciples. And so it starts. I'm going to start with Mark 12 verses 41 through 44. It says, Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciple to him and said, I'll tell you the truth. This poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. And so it's a small little sit down. Jesus goes and sits down and watches people as they give. And then he uses this as a lesson for his disciples to show them what true giving looks like. And so this widow gave all she had to live on. She gave 2 small coins. She gave everything she left to live on. And in contrast, right, the way the other people, it was in a very much contrast to the way the other people were handling their money. And so when we consider giving like a certain percentage of our income or a great accomplishment, right, we resemble those who give the tiniest part of our surplus. And so, and this is, I try to be careful here when I'm talking about giving, because I know it can be a turnoff. I know it can be I think sometimes people take it too far. And so we've got to find the middle ground here. One of the things we have to do is realize God, or Jesus, talked about money a lot, actually, and referenced money a lot. We see a lot about giving in the New Testament, sacrificial giving in the New Testament. And so what we see here, right, is you have a lot of people who are given a tiny bit of their surplus, right? They're given a tiny bit of what they have left over. And so, and Jesus isn't saying that's entirely bad. But what he's saying is he was admiring what generous and sacrificial giving, and I think that's what Jesus does call us to a point, right? Is to generous and sacrificial giving, but people have taken that too far, right? I've seen people where like they're barely struggling to get by, or they're not getting by at all, and you have people preaching and teaching to them. It's like, oh well, if you better give so much to the Lord, or He's not going to bless you at all. It's like, well, I got you. It's like they're sacrificing so much to the point of like they can't eat. And I don't think that's what God's calling us to. This is an example of like she gave everything she had, and she was giving, and I'm sure she was blessed for it. And there is a message in the fact that of, hey, when we see people, when we do give, when we, God's going to bless us, but we've got to be like logical with that still, like common sense with that still. It's like if I'm in a church and I see someone struggling, and I'm not going to sit there and say, oh well, you just need to keep on giving. I'm going to do what I can to help them, right? To give to them, to help get them back up on their feet to where they can give again, right? The way they should be able to. And I think that's how the church lived. If you look at the way the early church did, you follow it in Acts and others, other letters that Paul wrote, is most of their giving was actually designed for helping each other. Like if you look at a lot of the way they did things, a lot of their givings was giving to other Christians to help other Christians out who are struggling. And so not to say that we shouldn't use it to help the poor and help those in need and all that stuff, but there was a main focus on a lot of giving to help other Christians and those that are needing. And so I do think that should be the primary focus of the church. So we shouldn't convince people to give who can't make it on their own, and I can't make it at all. Especially to sacrificially give, we should, as a church, we should be there for them. And then whenever they have the opportunity, they can sacrificially give. And I don't think God's calling everyone to just give to the church to the point where you can't feed yourself. That's not what He's calling us to do. He's calling this woman out for her great sacrifice. Right? She gave all she had left to 2 things. But we don't see that anywhere where God's calling all of us to give everything we have and just go go live and try to figure out how we have to live. But there should be a sacrificial component to our giving, meaning like, well, maybe we don't buy the third vehicle, right? And I mean, that's just spoiled. That's first world problems. But maybe it's that instead of doing this thing, I give to the Lord first, or I give to someone in need first. And that's the other thing I want to talk about too. Um, it's not just about giving money to the church. Now, I do think we should give money to the church. The church has things that it does as a universal group, as a group, right? The church is it's a lot more powerful as a collective if done correctly. And I think there's a good thing to do. I think you should pay attention to what your church spends its money on, right? The church should be informing you what it spends its money on. That should be a clear and very open and very clear process, right? But so we should be, we can do a lot more when we group our resources together and go out into the world. There's no doubt about it. But some of our money too, I think, should just be, and I've talked about this. I've told people, it's like, yeah, give to the church, but also, maybe not give all of it to the church, but use some of it on the side to help others in need. You see someone in need, go help them out. That's to me, that is a very similar and the same thing. And so as believers, we should be consider increasing our giving, whether that's money, right? And now I don't think we should give, like I said, I don't think we should give till we put ourselves in the poorhouse. I don't think that's what God's calling us to do, but we should give to a point that there is a sacrificial component to it, right? But also, here's the other thing, and then we don't focus on this a lot of times. The main point is, like, we can also give of our time, of our talents, right? That's to a point beyond just a convenience or a calculation. If you just like, well, I'm giving 10%, that's it. Is there really any heart behind why you're giving? Now, maybe 10% is sacrificial for you, and that's awesome. But the wonderful thing about the New Testament is it doesn't call us to tithe. It calls us to give as we've been blessed, right? And in the end, if we actually look at it, everything that we have is God's. We've been blessed by God. God's given it to it. All of it is His. And so we have to determine how much we're going to give back to Him. And that's what the main focus is. And so I understand that churches can get carried away with this. I understand that. It can be hard sometimes to find the right balance. Sometimes churches get themselves or put themselves in positions where they almost have to get up and ask every time they get in the pulpit, ask for money, because they're so far behind, and that's unfortunate. But it should be a thing of, as a Christians, we should be convinced to give a certain amount, right? And it should be a sacrificial amount. And when I say sacrificial, I don't mean put you in the poorhouse sacrificial. I mean you giving up some of the things that we would like to do in order to give to the church, or to give to others, to help others out. I think there's the sacrificial call in our giving that we do that. We're going to be blessed for it. There's no doubt about it. We're going to be blessed for it. Even if we never see an earthly reward for it, we'll definitely see a heavenly reward for it. So there's no doubt about that. And so that's the kind of things I think we need to look at. It shouldn't be well, I'm giving my 10% and that's it, not going above. That's not an attitude of cheerful giving, a heart of giving, as the Bible's called us to. And so, if you look, this area was actually in the temple. It's called the Court of Women. And the area were 7 boxes in which worshipers could deposit their temple tax, and 6 boxes what was called free will offerings. And this was probably likely the one that this woman gave, would have been a free will offering that she gave here. And so the thing we got to look at was this widow was not only poor, but she had very few sources for making money. Widows in that day, they didn't have safety nets. The Jewish people should have been taking care of her. The religious leaders should have been looking after her, but instead she was giving to them, which was, kind of a thing that we want to look at, and we don't want to become like that. That's what I was kind of warning us about in the beginning. And so she had very few resources for making money. Widows back in that day, it was hard for them to make money. And so her small gift was a sacrifice. I mean, it was a true sacrifice because she gave all she had left, but she gave it willfully. And so, that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of giving that we're called to. And again, I'm not saying we take these things to the extreme sometimes. And I think God was using this as an example, right, of what we should strive for. But in the same time, He does not call us to put ourselves in the poorhouse or go bankrupt because we give all of our money away to the church and to others. That's not being good stewards of what God gave us either. And so we got to find that balance, find what's right. But I do think that we should always be looking for ways to give more. And whether that's your contribution to the church, whether that's your contribution to the poor, to helping others, I don't think it has to be just, oh, it can only be counted if I give it to someone, to a particular church. I think there's nothing wrong with using some of your funds on the side to help those you see in need and stuff like that, because sometimes there are needs that we see that, that we can take care of individually a little bit better than maybe the group as a church can take care of as well. So there's that balance. You got to find that balance. So overall, the main message out of this is that, we need to make sure we give one with a willing heart and an open heart and a sacrificial heart. And that's the thing that we're called to, is there's got to be some sacrifice in our giving and following God. There always will be, but in the end, we'll be truly, truly blessed for it. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed these. I appreciate those who are sharing. If you do find these useful, please share them with others, and so we can get that message out and spread that message. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do that. That way, it helps us be able to alert you, and you get notifications when we post new videos and new content. And I always appreciate the comments and stuff that y'all put in the message and the conversations that we have. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching.